You check your 401 at 11 p.m. Not because anything happened today, just because you can't stop thinking about it. The market's been calm for months, but some part of your brain keeps whispering, what if it's 2008 again? What if it's 2022 again? What if I open this app one morning and half my retirement is just gone? You've read the headlines. Inflation, recession, warnings. Some guy on TV yelling about a crash bigger than anything we've seen. And you start wondering, quietly, almost embarrassed to admit it, am I actually prepared for this? Or am I just hoping I am? Here's the strange part. Some people go through a market crash and barely flinch. Their portfolio dips, they shrug, they keep living their life. Other people go through the exact same crash and it wrecks them, financially and emotionally, for years. Same market, same crash, completely different outcome. So, what's the difference? What do the people who survive a crash actually have that the people who panic don't? And here's what I eventually figured out. It has almost nothing to do with predicting the market. It has everything to do with 6 specific signs. And once you know them, you can check your own portfolio against them tonight. I'm not a financial advisor. I don't manage money for a living. And I'm not going to pretend I can predict the next crash. Nobody can, no matter how confident they sound on YouTube. What I am is someone who spent years doing this wrong. I panic sold in a downturn once, watched a chunk of my account disappear, got scared, sold at the bottom, and then watched the market recover without me. It's one of the more expensive lessons I've paid for. So this isn't a lecture. This is what I wish someone had sat me down and explained before my first real crash. 6 signs. If you have most of them, you're going to be fine. If you don't, we've got time to fix that. And that's really the point of this video. Let me introduce you to 2 people. Let's call them Denise and Mark. Both 52 years old. Both live in Ohio. Both make around $95,000 a year. Both have been investing for about 20 years. On paper, they look almost identical. But picture 2 ships heading into the same storm. Denise's ship was built for weather. Reinforced hull, ballast in the right place, supplies stocked, crew that knows the drill. When the storm hits, the ship rocks, hard, sometimes, but it doesn't take on water. It rides it out. Mark's ship looks great in the marina. Shiny, fast, impressive. But it was built for calm water and good photos, not storms. When the waves hit, it takes on water fast. And in a panic, Mark does the worst possible thing. He jumps overboard in the middle of the storm, hoping to swim to something safer, and ends up worse off than if he just stayed on deck. Same storm. 2 completely different outcomes. And the difference wasn't luck. It was how the ship was built. Months and years before the storm ever showed up. That's what we're going to walk through. 6 things about Denise's ship that Mark's didn't have. 6 signs your own portfolio is actually storm ready, not just shiny. Level 1 removes the first fear, the fear that you're just guessing. Denise can tell you, in plain English, why she owns every major piece of her portfolio. Her index funds are there because she wants to own a slice of the entire U.S. economy, not bet on one company. Her bonds are there to soften the ride. She's not chasing whatever's trending. Mark, on the other hand, owns a pile of individual stocks he bought because a coworker mentioned them, plus 2 hot funds he saw on social media. If you asked him why he owns any of it, he'd shrug. It was doing well. Here's why this matters in a crash. When the market drops and you don't know why you own something, every headline becomes a reason to panic. When you do know why, a drop is just noise. The reason you bought it hasn't changed. This is the first plank in Denise's hull. Not fancy, just solid. Level 2 explains the concept that changes everything. Time horizon. Denise splits her money by when she'll actually need it. Money she needs in the next 2 to 3 years. Emergency fund, upcoming expenses, sits somewhere stable, not in the stock market. Money she won't touch for 15, 20, 30 years is invested for growth because she has time to ride out the dips. Mark has almost everything in the market, including cash he might need soon because it was earning more that way. That's fine until the market drops right when he needs the money, and suddenly a temporary dip becomes a permanent loss. Money she won't touch for 15, 20, 30 years is invested for growth because she has time to ride out the dips. Think about that for a moment. A crash only hurts you badly if you're forced to sell during it. If your near-term money was never in the market to begin with, The crash can't touch it. Level 3 shows practical application, the plan you make on a calm day for a stormy one. Denise has a simple rule she wrote down years ago. If the market drops 20%, I do nothing. If it drops 40%, I keep contributing to my 401k, like normal, because I'm buying shares on sale. She decided this in advance, on a boring Tuesday, with a clear head. Mark has no plan. So, when the crash actually hits, he's making decisions in real time, with fear running the show instead of logic. That's the exact moment his brain is least equipped to make a good financial decision, and it's the moment he's forced to make the biggest one. Read that again. The plan has to be made before the storm, not during it. Once the waves are hitting the deck, it's too late to design the ship. Let's actually rerun the numbers, because this is where it gets real. Say Denise and Mark both have $150,000 in their 401k. At age 52, a crash hits. The market drops 30%. Year 1, Denise's balance drops to $105,000. She keeps contributing $700 a month, like she planned. Mark's balance also drops to $105,000, but he panics, sells everything, and moves it to cash. Year 2, the market starts climbing back. Denise's $105,000 still invested grows with the market, plus her continued contributions, back toward $135,000. Mark's $105,000 sits in cash, earning almost nothing while he waits for things to feel safe again. Year 3, 5, Denise's account, fully invested the whole time, recovers past its original value and keeps compounding, landing somewhere around $190,000. Year 2, the market starts climbing back. Denise's $105,000, still invested, grows with the market, plus her continued contributions, back toward $135,000. Mark, still hesitant, finally gets back in near the top. After most of the recovery already happened, his account ends up around $140,000. Same starting balance, same crash, a $50,000 difference. Just from one person staying the course and one person reacting to fear. Let that sink in. The crash itself didn't decide the outcome. The reaction to the crash did. This isn't just a hypothetical either. Research from Fidelity, which studied millions of real 401k accounts through actual market downturns, found that the people who stopped contributing during downturns had noticeably lower account balances a decade later than those who kept contributing through the storm. A $50,000 difference, just from one person staying the course and one person reacting to fear. Let that sink in. The reaction to the crash did. This isn't just a hypothetical either. The people who kept investing through the scary part came out ahead of the people who tried to time their way to safety. Sign 4. You have cash set aside outside the market. Denise keeps 3 to 6 months of expenses in a regular savings account. It's not exciting. It doesn't grow much, but it means she'll never be forced to sell investments at a bad time just to cover a broken furnace or a job loss. Mark has almost nothing outside his investments. Every dollar is in the market, which means every emergency becomes a forced sale. Sign 5. You're not relying on one single source of retirement income. Denise has her 401k, a Roth IRA she's been quietly funding for 15 years. And she's factored in Social Security as a floor, not a full plan. Mark is counting almost entirely on his 401k and hoping Social Security just works out. Diversifying across types, a mix of pre-tax 401k money, tax-free Roth IRA money, and Social Security means a crash doesn't threaten every part of your income at once. Threaten every part of your income at once. Sign 6. You check your portfolio on a schedule, not out of panic. Denise looks at her accounts once a quarter. Mark checks his app multiple times a day during a downturn, which does nothing except spike his anxiety and tempt him to make an emotional decision. Checking constantly doesn't protect your money. It just makes you feel worse while protecting nothing. 6 signs, 6 planks in the hull. None of them require you to predict the next crash. All of them just require you to build the ship correctly, ahead of time. Here's what nobody talks about. Most people don't lose money in a crash because the market crashed. They lose money because of what they did in reaction to the crash. The market itself, historically, has always recovered. Every single crash in US history, the Great Depression, Black Monday, the dot-com bust, 2008, the COVID crash, was eventually followed by a recovery to new highs. The market doing what markets do isn't the enemy. The enemy is panic selling at the bottom, then sitting in cash too scared to get back in and missing the recovery in time. That's not a market problem. That's a behavior problem. And it's uncomfortable to hear because it means the crash you're afraid of isn't really the danger. You are, or more specifically, your untested, unplanned reaction to fear is. That's not meant to shame anyone. I did it myself. But naming it, honestly, is the only way to actually fix it. So how do you actually survive this phase? The waiting, the not knowing when the next crash hits, the anxiety that creeps in during every red day in the market. I think the honest answer is that you stop trying to eliminate the cell, more fear, and instead, you build a system that works even when the fear shows up. But naming it honestly is the only way to actually fix it. First, automate what you can. If your 401k and Roth IRA contributions happen automatically, you're not relying on willpower or calm nerves during a crash. The system does the right thing, even when your emotions don't want to. Second, write your plan down now, while you're calm. One sentence is enough. If the market drops significantly, I keep contributing, and I don't touch my long-term investment. Having it in writing, made before the fear arrives, gives you something to follow instead of something to decide in the moment. The system does the right thing, even when your emotions don't want to. Second, write your plan down now, while you're calm. Third, give your anxiety a smaller job. Instead of checking your portfolio, check your plan. Ask, am I still following what I decided? Instead of how much did I lose today? One question keeps you steady. The other keeps you spiraling. If you're in your 30s or early 40s, your biggest advantage is time. A crash right now is actually a discount on decades of future growth. Your one action step, check that you're actually invested for growth, not sitting too conservatively out of fear. Your mindset shift. A crash in your 30s is one of the best things that can happen to your eventual retirement because you have decades to let the recovery come. If you're in your 50s, your job is to start building the ship for the actual storm, not the calm water. Your one action step, separate the next 2 to 3 years of spending money from your long-term investments, so a crash right before or during retirement can't force you into a bad sale. Your mindset shift. You're not trying to avoid every wave anymore. You're making sure your ship can take one. If you're in your 60s or a late starter, your one action step, talk to a professional about how much of your money genuinely needs to stay stable versus how much can still grow. Because even in your 60s, part of your money likely needs to last another 20, 30 years. Your mindset shift. You're not trying to avoid every wave anymore. You're making sure your ship can take one. Your mindset shift. Late doesn't mean unable to fix. The Social Security Administration's own data shows a huge share of retirees rely on it for the majority of their income, which means even people who feel behind still a real flaw under them. Your mindset shift. You're not trying to avoid every wave anymore. You're making sure your ship can take one. It's about building the sturdiest possible ship with the time you have left, not giving up because the ship isn't perfect. At the end of the day, nobody can tell you exactly when the next storm hits. Not me, not the guy yelling on TV, not the smartest analyst on Wall Street. But you don't actually need to know when the storm is coming. You just need to know your ship can handle it when it does. That's the whole difference between Denise and Mark. It was never about who was smarter, or who got luckier, or who picked better stocks. It was about who built their ship on a calm day, and who was still building it in the middle of the storm. You get to choose which one you are. And the good news, today is still a calm day. If this helped you feel a little more prepared, you might like the video where I walk through exactly how much cash you actually need set aside before a downturn hits. Links right there. And if you're not subscribed yet, that's where I break down stuff like this every week. No fear-mongering, just what actually helps.